Let's take a minute or so to talk about game-based learning. It's one of the biggest trends in EdTech over the past 5 years or so. Websites like Kahoot, Quizzes, Quizlet Live, and several others. These games are engaging and fun, and they can help give teachers an idea of what their students understand. Now, every day, millions of students go to school and they play these games in class. A few years ago, Josh Feinsilber was one of them. But rather than just playing these quiz-based games, Josh would graduate high school with somewhat of a unique distinction. For a school project, he actually built his own online game show that he calls Gimkit. And in the span of just under 2 years, Gimkit has gone from a school project to a growing startup business featuring a platform that attracts millions of users all around the world. That's pretty impressive. But what makes this even more impressive is that Josh built Gimkit when he was just 16 years old. So, how does a high school project designed to help the 16-year-old practice coding skills end up as one of the fastest growing game-based learning platforms? That's what we'll explore on today's podcast. This is an interesting story which takes place in a very unique school system. And by the end of the podcast, I think you're really going to be impressed by the story of Gimkit. This podcast is called Gimkit, How to Build a Tech Startup in High School. Meet Josh Feinsilber. He lives in Issaquah, Washington, located about 20 minutes right outside of Seattle, the city that's home to giants like Amazon, Microsoft, and a plethora of other tech companies. And you might argue that the tech-rich Seattle area is the perfect home for Josh, because from as early as he can remember, technology was always something he was into, especially as a student in school.
I've always been somewhat into computers. I kind of pushed for ways I could use technology in the classroom when it wasn't necessarily the norm or the expectation. So this could be reading on a tablet or taking notes on a tablet or a laptop, when typically it was just done with pen and paper.
But as he got older, Josh noticed that his attitude and overall engagement for school had changed.
School was challenging for me, but I was constantly bored, and so I just do a lot of stuff to help me feel more engaged. And I just felt like I was waiting for the weekends, and I was just waiting for the summers. I just wasn't enjoying my time at school. I didn't feel like what I was learning was applicable to what I wanted to do.
Hillary Nadell has been Josh's high school advisor over the past 3 years. She remembers a student who was lost and disengaged, attending a traditional high school.
He came from regular traditional classes where he was bored, and he wanted a way to make education more interesting for kids.
But fortunately for Josh and about 200 other students in the Issaquah School District who weren't passionate about school, there would be a new opportunity to explore the topics they did care about.
Welcome to Gibson Eck. Gibson Eck offers an innovative school model that celebrates real-life education, where students drive their own learning through projects and real-world internships. At Gibson Eck, students don't follow a class schedule or earn grades. And
Julia Bamba is the principal of Gibson Eck High School, a choice school in the Issaquah School District that opened in fall of 2016.
The school district wanted to open a small choice school in the school district that would help to engage students who were maybe reluctant learners or students who weren't thriving in our comprehensive schools, either middle schools or high school. We wanted to create a place where students had a voice in their learning, and we wanted to create a school where students could personalize their learning so that it was relevant to their own lives.
The inspiration for the school came from Big Picture Learning, an organization that emphasizes internships, real-world experience, and a departure from the traditional means of assessment. The design of Gibson Eck is different from other comprehensive high schools in the district. Gibson Eck allows students to explore what they're curious about through interest-based learning and real-world internships. Traditional subjects like science, language arts, or history aren't formally taught. And grades?
We applied for a waiver from the state of Washington so that we can graduate our students based on competencies and not based on credits and grades. So in doing that, it allowed us to really open up what we were looking, because we weren't looking at offering specific classes around credits. Instead, we were looking at a competency-based approach.
The things that most of us associate with high school, like lectures, essays, and numeric grades, they don't exist at Gibson Eck. Students choose their own learning projects and solicit their own internships. They're assessed through a series of competencies such as social reasoning, communication, and empirical reasoning. Gibson Ag views these as life skills, not just skills for school. Every student takes an online math course to meet state requirements, and they have the option to take an online foreign language course as well. But outside of those two course offerings, the majority of what students learn at Gibson Ag is decided by the students themselves.
When I heard about this school that opened, which was project-based, and I could do work that was meaningful to me and a community that I cared about, that really stood out to me.
So let's go back to the fall of 2015. Before Gibson Ag opened, Julia held a series of informal meetings to share the vision for this new school. Community members, parents, and even students attended these meetings. And one of those students in attendance was Josh. He made a lasting impression to school officials, so much in fact that they asked him to serve as the student representative on the core team, a committee of adults who helped design and shape the school before it even opened. Here's what Julia remembers.
We had a lot of questions about, like, will your students be able to get into college? Or, how do you assess kids? What will their transcript look like? And I remember Josh sitting in pretty, close to the front and just said, what are you most excited about for designing a school like Gibson Ag? And just that idea of really like wanting to be part of something from the beginning, and really wanting it because he knows that there is like a great new way for students to be able to learn.
Hillary was sitting in the meeting as well.
We showed a film called Most Likely to Succeed, which is about the big picture model. And he found it super intriguing. So he comes to the screening and watches this film, and probably was sitting somewhere near me in the audience. I watched it as well and felt like, okay, this is it. This is my jam. This is what I want to do. And he signed up to be our student representative on the board even before he knew if he got in.
Fortunately, Josh did get into Gibson Ag as a sophomore in September of 2016. Initially, he planned on exploring filmmaking in his new school, perhaps being a director or a video editor. But instead, he kept experimenting with a new skill that he had picked up the summer before.
I discovered coding over the summer, and I said, hey, I really want to continue with this. And I knew how to get around, I should say, anything that I might need to do for the most part on a computer. I knew how to use this program. If I wanted to get this thing done, I could. The thing I didn't know how to do was to create my own things on the computer. And I said, okay, I'm at this point where I'm really invested in technology and I can really get around it, but I can't make my own things. And so how do I make my own things? I'm going to have to learn how to code.
That search to create his own things led Josh to the website Code Academy, an online platform that offers several courses in coding. You kind of learn how to code through completing a series of puzzles. But the thing is this, if you've ever tried to independently teach yourself to code on a platform like Code Academy, it can be, well, really hard. And it was really hard for Josh as well.
Code Academy did a good job of getting me the basics of here's how you write this and here's how you write that. The two things that it didn't do well was, one, it made me feel quite dumb. I'd say at least half of the problems on Code Academy that they wanted me to solve, I could not solve them. And I had to go to the online forums and literally just copy and paste the answers. And so part of that was the explanations. Part of that might have been my inexperience. But at the time, I remember thinking, I'm having to go to Google and search about at least half these questions. I don't think this coding thing is for me. And two, it didn't get me thinking like a programmer. And it wasn't until I started working on some projects, even before I went to this new school, that I really started to have that click for me.
What type of projects? Well, he started slow by making a few websites for things he was interested in. But as Hillary explains, early on during his sophomore year, he found a great opportunity to put his skills to work in order to solve a real problem at school.
We, as a school, needed a way to schedule students into different offerings or classes or design labs. And we had nothing, right? And so we didn't have a traditional schedule. We didn't have a traditional day. So we needed a way to figure that out. And he created a website called Gibson Ag Events. And it was a way that you could use a QR code scanner in a classroom, and the teacher would print up the QR codes or display them, and a student would scan them, and it would register them into a class.
He spent a lot of time getting the program up and running. And when it was up, if there were any issues, he was the only one who could fix it. Eventually, the school would move on to other systems for tracking, but it was Josh's solution that helped coordinate internships for students. So while he learned a lot about coding through this project, Josh learned even more about the power of serving his school community. At the same time that Josh was developing this program, he also was working on finding an internship with a local tech company. He thought this would help him learn about coding, but he soon ran into a problem. Internships were a huge part of the Gibsonet curriculum, but finding an internship during the school's first year was a huge challenge.
So we had no database of internships. We do now because students have gone to them and then students leave and now some new students can take their place. So we have a database. But at that time, we had none. So it was really up to us as students to reach out. And so I just did a bunch of cold emailing. I just looked up a bunch of smaller startups because I knew that would be kind of what I would be looking for in terms of having a closer relationship and not the bureaucracy of some larger companies. And also what would be more helpful for them is with a smaller team, having another developer could help. So I just cold emailed a bunch of companies.
Josh did such a stellar job presenting himself that he heard back from a few of those companies that he emailed. One was a Seattle-based startup, HaikuDeck, known for their online presentation software. As his internship advisor, Hillary was involved in these conversations.
Just to understand how special Josh is, as he's reaching out to this presentation software startup in Seattle that he's never met and he's never talked to, and he creates this video portfolio of who he is as a person, trying to get an internship as a coder or engineer, tech engineer, and he's never done any of that. And his portfolio is so well put together, so orchestrated so perfectly that Adam, the guy that owned the company at the time, says, let's do a phone interview. And Josh had never done one, and he's, 16, and I'm sitting in the room listening to him talk to this 40-year-old man about why he should hire him as an unpaid intern. And he sold himself on the phone that day. And I remember sitting back thinking, he's incredible. He's really incredible. That whatever he does, that was prior to Gimkit, but whatever he does will be incredible.
Despite having no work experience and only a certificate from Code Academy, where he Googled most of the answers, HaikuDeck founder Adam Tratt was impressed enough to offer him an internship. For the remainder of his sophomore and junior year, Josh would intern every Tuesday and Thursday at HaikuDeck.
They were the first to be nice and kind and generous enough to be able to take me on, even when I was way too inexperienced. I think at that point, I was coding for maybe 5 months. I had about 5 months experience from when I first started even Code Academy. So they took me on, I think, when I was too early, but they were kind enough to mentor me and help me grow as a developer.
Working with their code base and having the opportunity to learn under a mentor taught Josh more about programming than an online course like Code Academy or even a traditional computer science course ever could. But as he concluded his internship during his sophomore year, Josh began to look for a new experience, one that would allow him to further develop his engineering skills.
I wanted to have a project that would really challenge me from an engineering perspective. I kind of came to the realization that this is going to be some sort of product, some sort of thing that I'm going to create that's going to have to encompass a variety of stakeholders and engineering. Then I said, okay, if I'm going to build a product, I wanted to impact a community. Well, what's a community I know the best? It's education. I've been in school my entire life.
He discovered a new technology called the WebSockets and thought maybe he could create a messaging app. But then he had a different idea.
I kind of thought, okay, well, what's a tool that I would actually want to use as a student? And I loved using Kahoot. I loved using Quizlet Live. And those are some of the tools that helped me get engaged in school. And I said, okay, well, what if I could make my own game that would really help me if I was still in traditional school?
And just like that, he had the idea to build his own gamified classroom quiz game, the perfect platform to utilize the WebSockets technology that he had been researching. But when you're building a game-based assessment platform, where do you start? Well, while attending Gibsonet, Josh learned all about the process of design thinking, a method of creative problem solving. It's a process that involves developing empathy toward your user base. So it was no surprise that he started with research. Hillary explains a little bit more.
And we tell them your project has to start with research. Most students do it through online research. It's super safe and super comfortable to get on the World Wide Web and research, Google any topic of your choice. But Josh went kind of beyond that to reach out to teachers and ask them, what do you like about teaching? And he started seeking feedback that way. I was floored to see the hundreds of teachers that he had interviewed and connected. It's networking, one refers into another.
During this research, there was a platform that teachers and students talked a lot about, Kahoot. It was the biggest and most well-known of the game-based assessment tools. For the most part, their feedback was positive, but there were also some aspects to Kahoot that they weren't crazy about.
In terms of Kahoot, the main point from teachers was that it awarded speed over accuracy. And then from the student perspective, many of them felt like they didn't have a chance to win if they weren't the smartest in class.
This insight was important because it made Josh realize that whatever platform he built, it couldn't just be a Kahoot clone. While he wanted to incorporate elements of game-based learning that teachers and students enjoyed, he also wanted to solve the issues that they shared with him. With feedback and research from hundreds of teachers and students that he interviewed, Josh began to write the code for the first version of his program, which he called Gimlet. By the fall of 2017, Josh had a beta version of Gimlet, ready to share with a small group of teachers and students. Much like other gamified platforms, the initial interface was simple, and the design was colorful. His original tagline was, "A classroom quiz game for students and teachers, made by students." How much money did he spend building Gimlet? Well, as he'll tell you, not very much.
The initial startup costs weren't much. I was lucky enough that I had a laptop, and so I could build Gimkit on my laptop. But besides that, I just had to get the domain for Gimkit, and I was using a free hosting service initially, and I didn't start going to the paid plan until I needed it. So there was really no costs really associated with it. So it really just started off less than like $100 to get it up and running.
The results of their initial testing with teachers and students were positive as well. In their limited research, Josh discovered that students using Gimlet improved their test scores by 14%, twice as high as Kahoot and nearly 7 times higher than paper worksheets. While you might say that it was similar, Gimlet was a little different from some of the other popular platforms at the time, like Kahoot or Quizzes. Josh introduced the idea of strategy into his game. Students could earn money each time they answered questions correct, and they'd lose money for an incorrect answer. Eventually, they could buy power-ups that would help them advance in the game, like a streak bonus or question insurance. Features like this were in response to the feedback that he had received about how the same students were always winning at Kahoot. The strategy aspect helped make the game more competitive, and it rewarded mastery over speed. And the background music that he chose to use was a lot of fun as well. Take a listen. In his research with teachers, Josh discovered that one of the pain points with using these assessment tools was the time that it took to actually create the questions. So he developed a way that teachers could import any set of vocabulary words from Quizlet into Gimlet in just a few clicks. And in terms of informing teacher instruction, one game of this early version of Gimlet generated significantly more data points for teachers to review student progress. On October 30th, 2017, Josh launched Gimlet to the world. His goal was simple: find a handful of teachers that could use his quiz game to help make school more fun and help students learn. He set a goal to find 10 teachers to use Gimlet, but on the day that he launched, he didn't even have one user. And because of that, Josh tried sharing this new program on 2 different websites, Product Hunt and Reddit, inside the teachers subreddit. His posts from 2 years ago are still live today. Overall, the majority of the comments were positive, but one suggestion was consistent throughout. The name Gimlet needed to go.
At that time, I was kind of going through a naming crisis of sorts. It was called a Gimlet, which is an alcoholic beverage, and I needed to come up with a new name.
Okay, yeah, Gimlet is an alcoholic beverage. Definitely not the best name for a product being used with students. But on top of that, a lot of people today associate Gimlet with the podcast company, as in Gimlet Media. Having the same name as one of the world's most popular podcast companies could confuse people and maybe even violate a trademark. So for these reasons, the number one suggestion from the forums was to change the name. One of the users that echoed this feedback was Jeff Osborne, a digital marketing consultant who just happened to live in the Seattle area as well.
I was blown away that it was made by a student. That was the main thing that was like, I got to reach out to this guy. I want to know more. I mean, the idea was fully formed. I think that stuck out to me right away. The second major thing that stuck out to me was just the absolute need for an immediate name change.
Jeff had experience working with startups, specifically with branding, and he thought that he might be able to help out this ambitious high school student.
It was just really easy to get excited about the thing because you could see, even with just a few users, it's like, wow, you could see the impact it was having on their students.
So he reached out and emailed me saying, hey, we'd love to talk and just offer my help whenever I can. I'm a startup consultant and willing to help you out in whatever way you need.
The two eventually arranged a time to meet in person, hit it off, and Jeff would volunteer his time to help Josh over the next year or so.
He helped me do the research and conduct the interviews to find the new name, which ended up being Gimkit.
Josh selected Kit because his vision has always been that teachers can create these kits and then use them for various things. So pretty quickly we knew that Kit would be the name somehow, and then it was just playing with different iterations of that, the quiz kit, all the way down until we figured out that having something random, even if it didn't seem like an incredible name, was a better way to go.
And not too long after meeting Jeff, Josh would change the name from Gimlet to Gimkit. But some of the first advice that Jeff would provide was definitely not what Josh was expecting.
What he wanted was, okay, your background's in marketing. Tell me where to, like, if I have X amount of money to spend, tell me how to spend it and what should I do to grow this thing. And I just slowed him down and said, hey, we'll do all that. Don't worry. You'll have lots of time to do that stuff. But first, you got to get the product into a more secure, stable place. And the best way to do that is to talk to your users. He at the time was 17, and he listened to what I said and then did it and executed on it flawlessly. That was incredible to me because I have given the same advice to founders twice his age and business owners twice his age who don't listen and then have something blow up in their face and then we end up doing it anyway.
Rather than trying to grow and build an audience as quickly as possible, he encouraged Josh to slow down a bit, research and talk to the audience currently using Gimkit, discuss what was working and what wasn't, and then use that information to make the product better.
Jeff, he not only showed me the importance of building it with users, but showed me to wait for that process to mature a bit before going and sharing it with everyone. But that was tough for me because I wasn't getting that validation. It was weird building this thing and not sharing it with people. And it was hard to understand that, but I'm so happy I went through that now. And so it grew really, really slowly.
We even put together a survey for students. So some teachers wanted to give us their students' feedback. So we had some questions that they gave to their students. And then we were getting feedback from teachers and students. And then Josh was incredible about looking at that and figuring out, okay, here's the problems that they want solved, or they're kind of talking around to this problem, but here's the root of it, and then solving that problem with things that he would add to Gimkit.
The information from this process would help Josh realize some of the early weaknesses of Gimkit, and the solutions he developed helped strengthen the product in later years. And after a few months of talking to customers, Josh noticed that word of mouth about Gimkit was spreading, resulting in a rise of signups. It was especially apparent online. Case in point, the EdTech Review. It's a website based in New Delhi, India that boasts a subscriber base of 90,000 readers and an annual readership of 2.5 million educators from over 200 countries worldwide. The site also features different guest bloggers who share their work. One of these educators was Ruth Val, a foreign language teacher from Knoxville, Tennessee.
It's a great game, and if anybody tries it, they would see, okay, yeah, this is different. And I actually saw it on Twitter. So somebody had mentioned it, and I thought, well, let me try that. And so I started using it with my students, and they just loved it. So I wrote a blog post for the EdTech Review.
Gimkit, it's like Kahoot on steroids, will not only be the name of her blog, but also a simple phrase to describe Gimkit to new users.
She wrote a blog post that helped a lot. We'll see a lot of people say, if they're describing Gimkit, oh, it's like Kahoot on steroids. And that's from Ruth's initial blog post. So she's the first person that we ever heard say that, and people are still saying it. So I think the impact of that blog post is still being felt.
Kahoot is the self-contained game. The students don't really get the opportunity to do all the challenges and, earn this tremendous amount of money.
Over 100,000 visitors read Ruth's blog post, and it really helped spread the word. Within a few weeks, other popular bloggers like Alice Keeler and Matt Miller would share Gimkit to their audiences as well. As a result, over the summer and into the fall, Josh and Jeff saw some substantial growth, all without spending $1 on advertising or promotion.
What we would hear is, oh yeah, I heard about this a while ago, and then I heard about it again, and then I tried it out. And I think that repetition part is a really important part of marketing. So if one teacher likes Gimkit, they post it to 10 different Facebook groups, several different people would post it in the same group over a period of time. So, and that is something that like marketers try to replicate. It's just really cool to see all those things that you kind of learn about marketing all in practice and in a really cool organic word of mouth.
For Josh, this organic growth was exciting. Finally, he had a group of teachers and students that were using Gimkit. But as the user base increased, so did the workload. And while Jeff tried to help where he could, most of that work fell on Josh.
He has an internship 2 days a week. He has school 3 days a week. And then he has this thing that's like, teachers from all over asking him questions at all times of the day. And he's got product updates to fix bugs or things that aren't working or make improvements for teachers. And then really naturally at the beginning of the year, we started getting a lot more like department in school and district requests. So then he's like trying to figure out, so now I'm taking purchase orders, and he did all that stuff on his own.
The largest challenge I've had, and kind of still have to this day, is wearing a lot of hats and kind of context switching. And just feeling like you're overwhelmed is a common feeling. I've gotten a bit better at dealing with that, but I still have a really hard time of kind of disconnecting and taking a break from Gimkit. So saying, okay, it's not Gimkit time right now. It's just time for me, or time for me to spend time with my family. And that's just been super hard. When something you made is kind of your career and what you care most deeply about, it can be hard to disconnect with that.
And there were multiple times when it was just impossible for him to escape his work. Like toward the end of 2018, Josh was getting more and more error reports of students getting disconnected and dropping out of Gimkit. The game engine was failing, and this meant that Josh needed to rebuild a new one.
So he built an open source game engine called Blueboat, which is accessible on GitHub. And that not only took time, but it took a lot of refinement and problem solving. It was really difficult for him and personally, and getting it out, I think, was a huge relief.
By January of 2019, it was clear that Josh needed help, and there was just one person that he could think of. In a blog post titled, "What's Next for Me in Gimkit?" Josh announced he was officially naming Jeff as his co-founder. The two would both work full-time to develop Gimkit.
As Gimkit grew, it got busier and busier. Things got crazier and crazier. It was just becoming too much for me. And so in late January, he came on as business co-founder so I can focus more on product and can focus on the business end of Gimkit.
Josh's teachers made sure that he didn't go into this decision blindly.
I sat with his parents in a meeting immediately after meeting Jeff, and Jeff wanting to help. And I have to, I guess, disclaimer, Jeff is one of the nicest guys I've ever met and probably the best thing that's happened to Josh. But at the time, you just don't know. And Josh is at the time 16 or 17 years old and fairly naive and sheltered, and he doesn't know either. And we talked about legality-wise, is there something that you can fill out so that this person X doesn't try to take your business or take any of your code or take advantage of you? Is there can you get a lawyer involved? We talked about through that whole process, how that would happen. And then in regards to the school, we also talked I talked to Tim, who was our internship coordinator that year, and Julia, our principal, and then our district lawyer, about what Josh needed to do to protect himself. Because sometimes the stuff that or often in education, if you're making something during the school day with school dollars, it's the school's product. But in this case, he was able to not use school dollars and work on it so much on his own and protect himself that it is his product. We don't want it to be our product. And Jeff, thank goodness, didn't want it to be just his either. So he was fortunate in that he had connected with really good intentioned people, but we had a lot of very long legal conversations about how to protect him.
Together, Josh and Jeff mapped out a plan for the future, with Jeff focusing on the business and customer service aspects. Josh could now focus on the programming and development of Gimkit. With this new focus on development, Josh was able to add several new features into Gimkit.
A lot of the stuff that I bring into Gimkit is actually inspired by Fortnite. So I play Fortnite, and it's been the longest I've ever played a single video game. And I constantly think, well, why do I like playing this so much? One thing that Fortnite does do is limited time modes. And so they'll have modes that come out that kind of change gameplay in some way. And it's a ton of fun. And then they remove them and they swap them out with something else.
And one of the limited time modes that Josh was able to bring into Gimkit was based on the popular Avengers Endgame movie. It was a feature called Thanos Mode, and it was extremely popular with students.
The idea of Thanos Mode sincerely came from, he was like pumped out of his mind for this movie. We both were excited. And he was thinking, okay, I'm so excited for this movie. Like, wouldn't it be cool? I just want something, about this to be inside of Gimkit because I'm so excited about it.
I kind of always had the thought in the back of my mind, what if there was an Avengers or Thanos type mode? I kept it in my head for about a month, and then I bring it up to Jeff one day and mention it, and he goes, "Yeah, we should do that." I went, "Oh, really?" He said, "Yeah, we should do it." I'm like, okay, yeah, I'd love to work on that. Let's do it. And so I spent the next 2 or 3 days basically making a basic version.
After releasing Thanos Mode, Gimkit would see its largest period of growth to date.
It's kind of been setting records for the most part all school year, ever since April. So it's been nuts.
There's also the Summer Song. It was a special power-up that allowed students to change the music while playing Gimkit. So do this, go to YouTube and search Gimkit Summer Song. You'll see dozens of videos created by students, dedicated to this one song, as well as some of the other music featured in Gimkit. There's even one video from a user who looped the summer song for 10 hours. 10 hours. But there's other features, power-ups, and game modes too, like Humans versus Zombies, where the class competes against each other in 2 different teams, or Boss Battle, a mode which helps level the playing field for all students.
If he's putting things in the game that are bringing them joy or increasing engagement or making the students happier, making the teachers happier, that's what he wants to be doing. So he's had a teacher appreciation week where he had 3 different limited modes throughout that 1 week. He's in several different weekly power-ups, so you can kind of see there's all these things coming in and out of a game. And that's sort of the larger vision for him, where he wants to keep it new and exciting.
Now, all these features, power-ups, or game modes have one thing in common. They help make mundane activities like review more fun and more memorable. And that's exactly what Josh is going for with Gimkit.
Our mission is to create memorable classroom experiences. So not just things that help education, but really things in education that are memorable, that students and teachers will remember for years to come, and the ones that get them excited about it. And we're going to be doing that by creating kind of a suite of tools around creating memorable learning experiences in the classroom. So it's starting off with a game. We're not really quite sure what's next, but whatever comes next, we want to take kind of an area of school that's not too interesting and find a way to really make it exciting and engaging and memorable. When students are engaged, it really shows. Like there's a huge lack of engagement in a lot of areas of school. And so when something can come in and really boost engagement, that stands out.
Gimkit continues to experience stable growth each month. Millions of teachers and students use the platform every day, and the small additions that Josh builds into the game continue to be popular with students. And it makes total sense considering that Josh, the developer, is relatively the same age as students that are playing Gimkit. So 2019 was a huge year for both Josh and Gimkit. In June of 2019, Josh graduated from Gibson-Eck, and Hillary actually introduced him at his graduation.
You may know him as the kid who started Gimkit, a wildly successful classroom quiz game. But in the Red Room, we know him as the guy who announced the daily holiday, like every day for 3 years. Do you know what today is? Graduation day.
Josh is also taking the time to share his experience with others. He's presented at the Big Picture Learning Conference and the 2019 ISTE EdTech Conference. Gimkit has also been featured on several websites and in local media, like this news story.
A local high school student launches a learning app used by millions. It's a business path a graduating senior from Issaquah never imagined.
But he's not just about promoting Gimkit. Josh feels strongly that other students would flourish in a school like Gibson-Eck.
I'm also quite passionate about giving other students the same opportunity that I had of being able to make something like this in school. I definitely don't think I'm a special case. I think if more students were given the opportunity, they could go and build amazing and incredible things.
Josh continues to be committed to working full-time at Gimkit alongside Jeff. At one time this year, they worked out of an office in downtown Seattle. But recently, Josh made the decision to make Gimkit a remote company. And while they aren't working in one central location, Gimkit is slowly expanding their team by creating new positions. Hiring employees was obviously new for Josh, but as Hillary explains, he's been extremely thoughtful about the hiring process.
I was asking them a question about what will you do with the people that you don't want to hire? How will you let them down? And Josh, 18 years old Josh, who's never done this before, stops the conversation and goes, no, I know exactly. We're definitely going to do it through an email. He said, imagine being that person and I call them on the phone and I say, hi, this is Josh from Gimkit. And all of a sudden their heart soars because they've got the job in their head. And then I have to tell them they did it. And he said, that just is too hard on a person. And my goal is to treat them like I'd want to be treated. And I think I'd want to be let down in an easier, quicker way than that. And to me, that example, I just sat there listening to him thinking, you're 18 years old and you've never done this before, but his heart is incredible and it's in the right place. And that is going to take him so far.
His thoughtfulness for others can be reflected in his most recent Gimkit job posting for a customer support representative. In the posting, it states that Gimkit isn't interested in the crazy hours that tech startups usually abide by. Their goal is a 40-hour work week and a high quality of life outside of work. This is something extremely rare in a startup. But treating employees well is something that's important to Josh. So it's clear that along with being empathetic and considerate to new team members, Josh and Jeff have developed a sustainable business model for Gimkit. But as a new startup, the question is always going to be there. Would Gimkit ever take outside investment to grow? Or would they ever sell part of their company? Here's what Josh had to say.
Our current stance on it is we're not looking for investment, but it could change in the future. If we were ever to get investment, it would have to require a few things. One, it would require that our mindset doesn't change from helping teachers and students to how can we pay back our investors. And it would also just mean there's something that we really want to do that we can't given our current size and capital. And so we need that to help do it faster or just do it in general. Right now, we don't see the need to do it, but we never want to put anything off the table in case that opportunity comes up in the future.
In just a few years, Josh Feinsilber went from unengaged high school student to running his own tech startup company to help millions of teachers and students around the world. Like I said, that's impressive. But in my opinion, what makes the story the most impressive is how he built Gimkit up to this point. A focus on quality over quick growth, showing empathy for his education customers, treating his employees well, promoting a positive culture within the company, and like the Gimkit mission statement says, an emphasis on creating memorable learning experiences. Josh seems like he genuinely enjoys supporting teachers and students, and he's dedicated to it, and has no plans of stopping soon.
Money's never been a motivator for me, and instead it's been more about what do I want to do with my time here, and how can I help people the most. So for me, the ability to enjoy what I'm doing, building something, and also have it positively impact teachers and students is what's most exciting for me. And I'm most excited about the future of kind of doing that, but in more cases, in more scenarios, and for more people. I wasn't originally passionate about education, but working on this really developed my passion for education. So right now where I stand is I want to be in education for as long as I can. Definitely staying in education and finding ways to help students and teachers.
He's certainly come a long way from his days at Code Academy. So that is the story of Gimkit. Gimkit is a company and a platform that continue to evolve. And last week, Josh announced the release of the latest version of Gimkit, Gimkit 4.6. You can check out some of the new features at gimkit.com or on Twitter at Gimkit. Josh also writes a really great blog that takes you behind the scenes at his company, and you can find that at gimkit.com as well.